Architecture has this world-changing ability that we can literally turn fiction into fact. We can turn fantasy into concrete reality. 6 months ago when we had our first meeting with Hans Ulrich and Julia, we started coming up with ideas, and then we spent the next frantic half year desperately trying to turn this into reality. And today, for the first time, it's here, and now it's going to be part of Kensington Gardens for the next half year.
The principle of the Pavilion Commission has always been about an exhibition of architecture in the built form. We've expanded the discussion this year because we've got more architects, so it's a bigger exhibition, you can call it a group show, and the range of ages is very, very different. I think one of the most important things is that this structure is really open to everybody, free to all, and is an incredible magnet for people, not only in the park, but much further afield. So this is extremely exciting. This idea of what structures could look like, either summer houses or the pavilion, and how people will engage with this as if it was the town square. It's a space that people make their own. And I think that's one of the best things about the pavilion, is that this idea that it's access for all, art for all, as Gilbert and George say. And it's a way of really engaging with architecture in this wonderful context of a royal park of Kensington Gardens.
For this year's Serpentine Pavilion, we tried to dig down into, I think, one aspect of our work, this idea of trying to create the extraordinary out of the ordinary. And in a way, in this case, we've taken something as simple as a brick wall, and then with a lot of identical frames, and then simply by pulling the frames apart, it creates this undulating cliff on one side, and then inside it opens up this cave-like canyon.
The interesting thing about Bjarke's work is that he takes as its starting point the idea of the brick. And he has created this incredible kind of curtain wall, this shape that really is very, very poetic, curving of form, but also it's a soaring spire. It frames perfectly the Serpentine spire, in that way relating to the building. And inside you really get a sense of smallness inside of this great, 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 great structure.
The pavilion only consists of three things: the fiberglass frames, plus shaped aluminum profiles, and the big wooden boards. It's like sometimes things that you would say are mutually exclusive, and when you combine them, they create something new and interesting. These extruded frames, they're super light. The fiberglass makes the thickness of the material is between 9 and 3 millimeters. They get skinnier and skinnier towards the top. So when you actually look straight at the frames, the pavilion is completely immaterial, and the more oblique your angle becomes, the more solid it becomes. So actually inside you get this sort of interesting moire, where it goes from being completely opaque but translucent to being completely transparent, and suddenly you're looking straight into the park. So depending on where you see the pavilion from, both outside and inside, it really changes from being from a solid to a void.
And Bjarke from the very beginning, actually was interested in labyrinths. And this morning, suddenly when I passed by, it reminded me this first conversation, Julia and I had with him, where he evoked the church architectures of labyrinths, because there is something through the repetition of these elements. There is an enormous cathedral or church-like structure which evolves here. At the same time, it's widely, open. It will be fascinating to see how visitors are going to interact with it, how visitors, are going to use it, and also, of course, how it changes with the light and with the season. As you can see, when we started this conversation 10 minutes ago, it was a very different light than now, and so non-stop, the structures are never twice the same, because they are in this most wonderful park. They are surrounded by trees, and of course the weather changes. So it has only just begun.
What architecture and what architects should really remember is to take human happiness very seriously, because the more sort of joyful and enjoyable we can create our environment, the more enjoyable it's going to be a human being. The future looks bright, if also a bit wet for the pavilion.